What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you for tuning in. First things first, make sure you give it a like, leave a review, comment, follow, subscribe. You already know all that good stuff. I appreciate any feedback on the episode. So, the WBC concluded on Tuesday night with the United States versus Venezuela. Venezuela ends up getting the win, 3-2. Compelling game. Venezuela may not have been the team that a lot of people thought would get there. I did do a segment with, Wisconsin Sports on the Go, Trade, check it out. And before the tournament, I said Venezuela was one of those teams with a sneaky good roster, and they end up getting all the way to the final and winning it. But now, the talk about the game, first off, the U.S. Dominican Republic game ending on the controversial third strike with Mason Miller. And now people are talking about should ABS have been in it. I'm one of those that the technology's there. Why not use it? So I feel like baseball should have had it in the WBC. You could have introduced fans to it before the MLB season if they haven't been paying attention to spring training or anything like that. That's the first thing. Neither here nor there. But looking at the way that the Venezuelan game played out, you had McLean starting for the U.S., which obviously the first thought was if Skubal wasn't a one-and-done pitcher, would this have been maybe a Skeens start? That's something to think about. But look, McLean went 4 2/3 and gave it 2 runs. Like I'm not going to sit here and absolutely destroy him for his performance. Now, he had an ERA hovering around 6, so probably not the pitcher you wanted to start in the championship game, but only 2 runs. And with this U.S. lineup, you just wanted to be kind of in the game for McLean's innings, and you were. I think the bigger issue with the U.S. was, obviously, timely hitting. And when you're looking at the performances of the U.S. players, a couple stand out. One, Mr. Captain America, Aaron Judge. First, Marvel should sue Aaron Judge for defamation because he is not Captain America. He went through the tournament. He, wasn't great at the plate. Championship game, he goes 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts, which if you watch the Yankees or anything like that, that's kind of on par with him in big games. This is a guy who hits 240. Oh, sorry. He hits 236 in the playoffs. He's a 294 regular season hitter. 346 is his on-base percentage in the playoffs, down from 413 in the regular season. 476 slugging, down from 615 slugging in the regular season. He is not a big game performer. Just isn't. I know everybody thinks he's like the best player in the league or in the world. Sure. In the regular season, he puts up great numbers, but I wasn't surprised to see a performance like that from Aaron Judge. It's who he is. It's his brand. Now, Bryce Harper wasn't having a great tournament, but in the biggest moment, Bryce Harper stepped up and delivered. That's kind of on brand with Bryce Harper. In that moment when Bryce Harper walked up to the plate, I kind of figured he was going to do something productive. He's a guy who, in a game like that, which was emotionally charged, being down in Miami, we know the Latin American contingency down there. It felt like a home game for Venezuela because of that. So Harper, in, I guess, a hostile environment, if you want to call it that, stepped up. And Harper's a guy that his regular season and postseason splits, if they are down, it's slight. He's basically the same player both instances. 280 regular season hitter, 274 in the playoffs. Basically the same. 387 on base in the regular season, 390 in the postseason. Basically the same. And 519 slugging in the regular season. He's a 596 slugger in the postseason. So he delivered in a moment that I could have seen. So that's two. The third thing is DeRosa. He's had an interesting ending to the tournament because you look at the championship game, couple of decisions that he made that obviously hindsight 2020 that they lose, you can question. You'd be valid in questioning a couple of decisions. One, why was Alex Bregman starting over Gunnar Henderson? Gunnar Henderson, the younger player, I feel like some would argue maybe the better player at third base, had a tournament, he was hitting 400. Bregman, after an 0 for 3 night, hit 143 in the tournament. Once again, why wouldn't you just start Henderson? The second one, Byron Buxton, who, was on the team. I think some people wondered necessarily if he should have been there or whatever, but he gets the start. He goes 0 for 1, and then they bring in PCA. PCA, I think once again, you would argue, the better player. So why wasn't PCA starting? Buxton went the whole tournament, didn't get a hit. But he was starting in the championship game. Now, some of these decisions could have been, I don't know, behind the scenes workings with their teams or whatever. I don't know. I'm not in those conversations. But those were two that, looking at the starting lineup, I was kind of wondering what was the reasoning behind it. So you kind of take all that, Roman Anthony strikes out to end the game, but Roman Anthony had a great tournament. And just a side note, fellow Red Sox fans, seeing Roman Anthony, seeing Wilyer Abreu, who hit the 2-run home run for Venezuela and had a pretty good tournament, hitting 250, feeling good about 2/3 of the outfield. And obviously Rafaela, we already know the kind of player he is. So I think the outfield, once again, for the Red Sox will look pretty good, but I'll say that for another episode talking MLB. But, congratulations to Venezuela. Obviously, they get it done. Now, the conversations as well about the U.S. not looking like they're having fun and all this kind of stuff, you do realize the U.S. are a representation of MLB. Now, there are MLB players on other nations' teams, of course, but those guys represent the country that they play for, where the atmosphere, the vibe around baseball is completely different. Because MLB, and this is part of the reason why they've kind of been falling further and further behind in terms of major sports, and why there are conversations about, like MLS and soccer passing baseball at a certain point down the line. But when you watch MLB games and you see the coverage, anytime like a Latin American player or somebody, as they call it, pimp a home run, the very first thing you hear about is like unwritten rules for this, unwritten rules for that, act like you've done it before, those conversations, which are so annoying. I'm somebody who loves players showing emotions and bringing flair to a game like baseball, which, let's be honest, there's a lot of downtime, there's a lot of kind of dull moments. Those moments really stand out. Jose Bautista, what was it, the playoffs, home run walk-off, the crazy bat flip, stuff like that you remember. But that's also the kind of stuff that drives your traditional MLB fan crazy. That's part of the problem with this. The next thing is, when Venezuelan players or whoever, they come out and they say international play kind of means more to them than necessarily like their MLB accolades. So to some of these Venezuelan players, winning the WBC is on par, if not higher, than possibly winning a World Series. Once again, the traditional MLB fan will hear that and will be disgraced by it. But you have to understand, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, whatever, baseball is a way of life. That is usually a lot of their you know, ticket to, well, I guess in some cases maybe getting out of the country, making boatloads of money, and then like kind of funneling back to their home country, stuff like that. So baseball means a lot to them. Not saying it doesn't mean anything to the U.S. players, but the MLB has kind of made it so that U.S. players are supposed to be very businesslike and very, you know, even keeled type. Now there are some exceptions. Bryce Harper absolutely is an exception, and like I said, I have zero problems with it. But you look at a guy like Aaron Judge. I mean, people were talking about his little pre-tournament speech. It was dull, boring. That's who he is. Can't expect him to be anything different. Look at Mike Trout, who everybody's like, Mike Trout's the best player in the league or whatever. There's large sections of people that if Mike Trout walked down the street may not even know it's him. Because he's not flashy. He's pretty boring, buttoned up. And I think that's where the difference is. That is seen as MLB professional. And then those fans will look at, you know, like Eugenio Suarez. Hits the double to give their team the lead. He's on second base. Hands to the sky. You know, as he said, he was praying, everything like that. Some MLB fans will look at that and be like, oh, he's doing way too much. He's playing it up for the camera. That's where the divide is. And it's always going to be like that until probably MLB fans more so embrace the Latin American passion that goes into baseball. Then we might see a bit of a shift. So I only brought that up because I thought those conversations were ridiculous, and I thought the people having those conversations know the answer, but you know. So yeah, I think all in all, great tournament. I do think, you know, maybe for American fans, they probably need to view the tournament a little differently as well. I think for most baseball fans, the WBC comes around every couple of years, and it just is what it is, because most fans are just ready for the MLB regular season to get started so that they can, you know, cheer their team on their road to the World Series. You know, the WBC, they're just going to look at it as these are guys who are in spring training mode. It is what it is. Just hope that your guy doesn't get hurt on your team. Whereas these other countries, they are out there trying to win because they are doing it for their home country. And like I said, that's the divide between U.S. player emotion and these other countries. Even though there are MLB players on all these other countries. So, yeah, but I want to hear from you. Like, what were your thoughts on the tournament? Like, are you bummed the U.S. didn't win? You know, the U.S. was on a bit of a run in international play. You know, the U.S. Canada hockey teams winning in the Olympics. USA basketball winning. Like, you know, it was a bit of a run. It ends with the baseball team. But like I said, it was fun to watch. You know? I actually even did like the old school thing, and because a lot of times when the games were on, I was watching something else. I had the games pulled up like on my phone, and I was listening to the radio call for the game. I don't know. With baseball, I feel like it's kind of fun for me to kind of do that every once in a while. Just listen to the radio call instead of necessarily watching it. I feel like as a kid, that's what I would do with baseball. Because like I said, there's a lot of downtime when you're watching it where you could, you know, whatever. But kind of like that banter you hear on the call is what really kind of carries the broadcast and everything and builds up the atmosphere. Because look, the call for the Bryce Harper home run was a great call and really built up the moment even more than if you were watching it. Like I said, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if you guys feel the same way. But like I said, let me know what you thought about the tournament, what you thought about the USA play. DeRosa, would you do you think he should manage the next one, or should they get an MLB manager or whatever? Like, I don't know. But thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Once again, any feedback is good feedback. If you want to leave a negative one, that's fine. But drop a comment, leave a review, subscribe, follow, depending on the platform. Greatly appreciate it. So you enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe. God bless. And until I talk to you next time, I'm out of here. All right? Bye.